Good afternoon, fellow Plexers. I'm going to make two videos today, both involving how to install Plex on a Synology NAS. This first one is going to be for models that do not have an Intel iGPU that would enable Plex's hardware acceleration that's unlocked with a Plex Pass. So I think all really great roads to Docker containers on a Synology NAS start with this website. Marius Hosting is an excellent resource, and the guides are very easy to follow along. I do think you need to know just a couple things that I'll point out. But number one, support Marius if you use my tutorial on YouTube as a visual aid because you're a visual learner. Remember, all my information comes from his site. You should go over and make him a donation of whatever you think is worthwhile. I don't need anything. I just want to help people get their Plex server running well for them. But this is a great resource for Docker containers on your NAS, just as Space Rex's YouTube channel is a great resource for your Synology NAS overall. I can't say enough how much these two individuals have helped my journey with Plex and with my Synology NAS. So basically, Marius has an install of Plex for everybody. He can walk you through a package install with a package directly from Synology. He can walk you through an install of a package directly from Plex, which should be the preferred method between the two package installs. He can get Plex going for you in a Docker container with a simple task scheduler script in Synology on a Synology NAS, but you can't gain hardware acceleration this way. But this is how we'll be doing it today for those people with non-Intel CPUs. Well, non-Intel CPUs that don't have a iGPU. Anyway, you get what I mean. I'm not a professional YouTuber. I just try to help people out, so please bear with me. The next video I'll make is showing how to set up Plex with hardware transcoding, and we'll be using Portainer with that. I'll have to look to see what the differences are between these two. But so for today's video, we're going to follow this simple task scheduler guide. So step one is go support his work. You can make it your last step, but have faith. Go throw him $5, throw him $10, throw him $20. He does great work, and once you start using his guides, you'll be back for more views into what else you can do with your Synology NAS in a Docker container. So the first step is to install Container Manager. So that's simply going to Package Center and searching out Container Manager. Click on it, click Install, and once it's installed, just make sure it's running. The next step is to create a Plex folder, subfolder in the Docker folder. Now, I don't really know the answer to this question because under DSM-6, you had to create the Docker shared folder to start with. You may not have to under DSM-7, and I'm assuming you don't have to because we're not being told to here, but just in case you do have to create that yourself, go to Control Panel, Shared Folders, Create Shared Folder, name it Docker, and just default permissions is enough because only the admins would have permission to this. But again, I don't think you have to do this under DSM-7. What you do have to do is you have to create the container folder, and I'm not going to call it Plex, but I'll get into that for a second, and you can do that in File Station, which I've already done. If I go to my Docker shared folder, this is an existing container I had running with test media on it to use for tutorial videos, and I've created this one, and I've actually spun up a container. But let's delete everything in this. I did do a little prep work for this video. So under Docker, you create folder and name it whatever you want your Plex container to be named, lowercase, no spaces. And you can do that, let's see, where am I? You can do that with your local file manager too. I'm just browsed into my NAS. I can't create shared folders, but once they're created and I have permission to them, I can create a folder here. So you can do that with your local file browser too. So I'm going to be calling mine Plex NH. So at this point, I would get a scratch pad going so you can write down what you're going to use. So I just made a note that Plex NHW is the container folder name, and I'm just letting that reference no hardware acceleration. So the next step is to create a scheduled task, but we're going to jump down past this information because what you need to do first is find your time zone and, let's see, where are we? Find out your PUID and PGID numbers. So I've already opened this link here. This is what you really need to do first. You need to create this scheduled task. And let me go back to Synology. I assume you'll be following along with a written guide, the excellent written guide, and my tutorial, just in case you get stuck. I don't expect this to be a full tutorial, but it's kind of going through the motions of one. So we'll go into Control Panel, we'll go into Task Scheduler, and I already have this created. Now this one will run under an admin account, which I created a temporary one for this demonstration. When you actually install the Plex container this way, it will be under root. Otherwise, you'll get a failure. So if I click this, I'll edit it. And let's go back for a second to this guide. Marius has a screenshot here of all three windows, all three tabs set up so you can match everything you want. So this requires your username, and I am using my temporary admin name here, but you could use your plain username. Let's see. You uncheck this when you create it. You don't see it on my Edit tab. So let's go to Schedule. And you'll see everything on mine matches up here. Run on the following date. Nothing else is checked. If I go to Task Settings, you'll see I'm a match 2. I'm sending things to my personal email address, which, yeah, I guess I'm not going to block that out. I'll just let that stay. If you want to email me, feel free to, but I use this email address for my personal friends. We're probably not going to correspond at it, so just let it go there. Let it go at that. So you want to be notified of the container starting up or failing to start. You could only send a message if it doesn't complete properly, and all this needs is ID. So once that's created, of course, you'll have to apply it and save it, and you may have to put in your admin password. I don't know if you have to do that for this one, but you definitely have to do that when you create the next one. So once it's created, make sure it's unchecked because you're not going to run this on a schedule. Right click and choose Run. So while we're waiting for that to come in, we're going to just do this. Docker container, time zone for New York State. Okay, my email came through, and this is all I need. I'm going to control and copy that. And let's get back into the main guide. So you'll see I've already got this filled out with my own time zone. So if I take all of Marius's information, let's see, where are we? And use it for comparative purposes. You'll see that I've changed my name of the container to match the folder name that I'm using. I have to check and see if my PUID and PGID numbers are the same. So let me go into my email to do that next. So at the bottom of the email, this information came in. So you'll see that I'm a match 10, 28, and 100. So I don't have to change his defaults. I do have to change his time zone to my own. And then I also have to change his example of the folder name to what I'm actually using. Plex NHW. And this is about the only confusing statement that I think he gives. He shows the path to your Plex media as volume 1, and then he has a shared network folder called web, even though he's not telling you that's what it is. Inside that shared network folder called web is a subfolder called movies, and he's doing a path just to movies. And this is confusing if you have a TV show and a music library too. So you can just copy and paste additional line for each and make these adjustments to add 3 path statements. Now you don't really need any of that, but you could. So let's get rid of that one, and let's pretend we'll change this one to Plex Media. So now I've adapted his style to point to the shared folder, and then the alias that we'll see inside of Plex when we add a library is Plex Media, and any subfolders on the physical media will just appear there. So I know this sounds confusing, but that's what I've done in my own path statement. Let's bring in my actual folder structure. So I've shared before that I think a nested folder structure is both efficient and leaves you room for growth in the future. This is all public domain media. Here is my example. So I have my main network shared folder that I had to create in DSM. And it has permissions for me as a user on my computer to log in. So inside that, I created a sort folder for every type of Plex library. Movie libraries, music libraries, other libraries, or other video libraries, photo libraries, and TV show libraries. Inside the movie libraries are examples of multiple movie libraries. So your main movies would go here, kids movies. I created a folder just for a future DVR, documentaries sorted out. Same for TVs, show libraries. The DVR option, kids, main, and this is just test. I was doing something someplace. I really can't make a huge case for someone having multiple music libraries, but I just followed the same theme, even though there's only one music library inside it. The point of all this, I just need to give the container permission to this one shared folder, and then I'll see every library in it. So this statement here is my shared folder, and I've just named it something funny like Plex Look Here. So when we spin up the Plex container and go to add our first library, you'll see that. So I refer to this as an alias. So Marius is great, but I do think this is a little confusing because he doesn't tell someone what to do with a music or TV show library. But just think of this as your shared media folder, and this is a subfolder, and if you're going to point to that, you also need to point to any other subfolders. So skip all that. Skip all that and just point to your main shared folder for your media. All right, so once you get that figured out with your PUID, your PGID, your time zone, and this is going to be almost the same for everybody. The only change is depending on what you name the container folder. And this is the only hard part that you have to figure out for yourself, the path. And I'll know by your comments whether I've done a good job or not. So once that's figured out, again, he gives you the 3-panel view of how to set this up. So if I go into this Plex and edit it, so it's Plex without hardware acceleration. The most important thing is to make sure you're root as user for this. Otherwise, you'll get a failure. And then in the Schedule tab, just make sure it's a match. And I am running here. That wasn't a match. And under Task Settings, you just paste in your configuration. Just like that. And I want run details by email. You could check it if you only want to see a failure. And you just make sure everything matches and you click OK. And now this is going to want my password. So I'm going to take it off screen. I type my admin password. And now if I right click on it, well, before we do that, let's go to Container Manager. And we will go to, let's see, what we got? Containers. So I have Portainer spun up, and I have that original Plex container that's created, but it's not running right now. Green means it's running. The blank means it's not. So I just wanted to show you that nothing's running besides Portainer. So if I right click and choose run, we'll wait for the email. But while we're waiting, let's go back to Container Manager. And we already have the Plex container spun up. Now that really was simple, wasn't it? It didn't take much. You just really have to get the path statements correct, and you have to make sure that you reference the right name for the container folder. So this is what I was just emailed. Completed a scheduled task. Current status is normal, and that's all we need to see. So now you need to know the IP address that your server is running on. I'm sure you know it, and I've got DSM running in a Chrome app, but I can hit the 3 dots and I can copy URL. Let me go back to this, and if I paste that in, it's going to give me the IP address. And this is a local IP address. It doesn't hurt to show. So you really just have to put it into this formula. Add your own IP address here, :32400 for Plex's default port, and add the web part. So I'm going to copy that. Go to a new browsing window, paste that in, and let me take that off screen for a minute. So now you should see how Plex works, and I'm going to do that, and let me name this, I'll use Syno 1019. Let me do, let's give it a real goofy name. ST for Scheduled Task Test. Now I already have the port forwarded for this Synology NAS in my router settings, so all I have to do is click allow me to access my media outside my home, and this will be an easy setup. Okay, I had to pause for a second. So we're in the new media setup. So I'm going to just click Add Library. And of course, it's tempting. Don't click Next. Click Add Library. And I'll add a movie library. Click Next. I'll browse for my media folder. And that alias that I set up, Plex Look Here, sticks out like a sore thumb. So I click on that. And now you see all the sort folders I set up for each Plex library type. So it's pretty easy to pick movie. And now I'm going to click the main one. And at this point, I see the movies in that folder, and that's where I want to stop. So I'll click Add. And then this is all personal preference. I suggest using the latest and greatest scanner and agent. Don't change that. I also suggest not check and prefer local metadata. If your movies and episodes have scene release tags to them, they might not scan properly if you do this. And then the only change I make is I don't want to see an automatic collection until I have at least 2 movies. And that's it. Add library. So let's add couple more. Going to browse to Plex Look Here, movie, kids, stop when I see the media, advanced. Well, I don't really have to do anything. I don't care about collections in this group. It's just an example. I'll add that. One more, movies. Actually, I'll just call this documentaries. Click in the alias, the sort folder for movies, the documentary one, there's only one example there. Add library. Let's add a couple TV show libraries. We'll just call this TV shows for the main one. The same alias. Now we're into the TV library sort folder. I'll click the main library, click add. And I do think there are options worth discussing under the advanced for a TV show library. Again, use the latest and greatest scanner and agent. I do all my naming from TVDB for many reasons. So I always switch episode ordering to the TVDB. If you do all your naming from the movie database, leave this alone. And again, don't check prefer local metadata because it may not match and it may pull scene release names that are embedded in the media itself. So that can be problematic unless your media is pretty virgin and doesn't have tags to it. So TVDB also has an alternate DVD order. I could leave this as the movie database and then adjust to show manually to use TVDB aired or DVD order. But really, just set this to whatever you name from. If you name from both databases, I would stop being schizophrenic and pick one or the other. And I just think the TVDB covers all bases. All right, so let's add the kids TV show library. Plex, look here, TV library sort folder, kids. And there's only a few Looney Tune episodes in there, which is a good example. This show does not exist at the movie database. If I didn't make the advanced setting change, I wouldn't find it. All these old Looney Tune cartoons going back to 1929 are just old movie shorts. They do exist at the movie database as movies, but not as TV shows. Some genius over at TVDB decided it was okay to create virtual TV shows of short movies to represent a TV show for us Plex users to put into our server in a more cohesive way. Another example is Tom and Jerry, the old movie serials. They use a folder system for seasons of season 1940, season 1950, and season 1960, because all those cartoons are old movie shorts. But you can have them in a TV show library because of that inclusion as a virtual TV show. And I've mentioned this before, TMDB does not have a listing for all of Ken Burns' documentaries, but TVDB does as Ken Burn films. So you can have all those documentaries grouped together. So it really is a boon to use the one database. So we'll change the ordering here. And our last library is a music library. And it was hard to come up with public domain media, so I don't have a lot of it. Plex, look here. We're in my music libraries, music main, add library. So now I can hit next, and it tells you how to get some Plex apps. So I can hit done. So this is my main server. I want to be under this. You'll see a test set up on my newer Synology NAS, and my main server actually runs on a little 11th gen Unraid NUC running. Again, running Unraid that points back to my media on my Synology NAS. But as long as I'm there, I need to apply remote access, but I can't do that without showing my external IP address. So I'm just going to go in here and, actually I'd have to look it up. This NAS has a different port forwarded, so I can't do that quickly without pulling my distraction away. So let me go down to libraries. So if I enter this library, you'll see they scanned in fine. And again, this is all public domain, except for this. I forgot to delete that media.
You have a text message.
That media is just some dummy files I was running a test for somebody on. So let me go into this. Yeah, these are tiny 5-second files of me just saying something stupid just to have media to play with to see if it matches up correctly. So I can delete that.
You have a text message.
So let's check this setting. Make sure I'm on the right server. And I think it is not network library. I should be able to scan my library automatically and run a partial scan when changes are detected. Of course, I have to save that down at the bottom. So this is a successful Plex install. Even the music came in. So any questions, let me know with a comment on YouTube and not the group I made this video for. And that will be a future discussion. So anyway, Eric, this is for you specifically or for anyone else who wants to create a Plex Docker container without hardware acceleration. I'll get this up on YouTube and jump into my next video for the day.